Let's say for a moment you're from a small town. You know, one of those ones that you basically never have to leave because the locally owned businesses employ the residents, creating a self-sufficient ecosystem. You spent your formative years here and know it like the back of your hand. Sure, it's a little outdated and there's that one family that's a bit too friendly with one another. But for those who love it there, it doesn't need to change at all. Now let's assume you go into a 10-year coma, which honestly would be an improvement over Disney Star Wars. Upon your recovery, you're met with the realization that your once quaint village has been modernized. It now sports a Barnes & Noble, a Starbucks, and a Walmart. Oh, and every girl in town now identifies as a pansexual and has an OnlyFans account. This is likely a feeling similar to the one many old-school Star Wars fans are experiencing nowadays, as their once-beloved franchise now bears no resemblance to what they once fell in love with, but has been hijacked and co-opted for the nefarious purpose of acting as a vehicle for modern identity politics and vanity projects operated by a collection of the worst showrunners and activists ever assembled under one creative banner. The Acolyte is not only the most recent addition to the overflowing septic tank known as Lucasfilm, it might be the single worst culprit of modern dogshit word assembly to date. So let's take a look at this dumpster fire, shall we? But before we start, I know everybody's time is valuable, and some have already watched reviews of the first 2 episodes. So if you're only interested in episode 3, please go to this timestamp right here. Episode 1 kicks off in tremendous fashion as our currently nameless antagonist tracks down a local Jedi Master played by an apathetic Carrie-Anne Moss.
Feels exciting, yeah.
Her emotionless face perfectly capturing my exact feeling toward this Lucasfilm shit show anymore. Easily dispatching all of her drinking buddies, the assassin turns her attention towards Jedi Master Trinity and eventually hits the coup de grace with a kunai to the chest. Wait a minute, let me get this straight. Lightsaber impalement doesn't kill what's-her-name from Ahsoka, but a small kunai dead within seconds.
Doesn't make any sense. Too bad.
I know what some people are gonna say, but it was to the heart. So let's just ignore the existence of the human breastplate for a minute. A lightsaber would melt pretty much all of your internal organs, which includes the fucking heart.
You're breaking my heart.
And don't even get me started on how this quote-unquote master was so easily distracted, resulting in her demise. Anyway, with the biggest name actor in the series officially dead, I'm sure that was money well spent, Disney. The assailant exits, leaving only one eyewitness. The following day on a distant Trade Federation freighter, we meet the assassin's doppelganger Osha, who is employed as a mechanic to fix external hull damage, which literally any astromech droid can do better, faster, and cheaper. Also, from a writing perspective, a strange choice for a name considering her profession is one big OSHA violation. A joke I realize that nobody but Americans will understand, but I digress. After fixing the hull, which suspiciously catches fire in the vacuum of space, she is questioned by Jedi Diversity Hire number 1, Yord, and taken into custody. What follows might actually be the single most baffling thing I've ever seen. She is placed in a completely automated transport run by droids along with other criminals to be sent to Coruscant. Declining the scum and villainies offer to escape, Osha is stranded when the droids are easily hacked and the ship brought down. 2 huge questions here. 1, why would you transport someone capable of hacking your pilots with 0 contingency plans? 2, why was such a high-profile person of interest who was in the custody of a Jedi Knight not brought back by said Jedi Knight directly? They even mention this a little later when Yord himself laments this decision. Meanwhile, back at the Jedi Temple, we're introduced to Jedi Diversity Hire number 2, Saul, Osha's former master and quite possibly the single easiest person to convince anything ever.
May is dead.
May is alive.
I believe you.
But more about that later. After assembling a team consisting of himself, the already proven incompetent Yord, and Padawan X-23, they venture out to the planet Not Hoth, where Osha is having a vision of her long-lost twin sister, May.
This is getting out of hand. Now there are 2 of them.
Cause you know, nothing screams originality in Star Wars quite like twins.
You 2 motherfuckers look like y'all could be twins.
I think they actually look very dissimilar.
May, thought to be dead for over a decade, has seemingly taken up the dark arts. As the episode closes, our search party consisting of everything but a white guy is able to locate and save Osha. While off on a distant planet, May meets with her master, who has possibly the dumbest line I've ever heard.
If you attack a Jedi with a weapon, you will fail. Steel or laser are no threat to them.
Except, you know, like the beginning of the episode. Hey there, ladies, are you perhaps not feeling so fresh down there? Is the itching and burning making you truly hate the patriarchy? Perhaps you've recently been to the beach and got sand in your most intimate regions, resulting in an insatiable urge to defile an iconic franchise. Well, rather than ruin one of the most profitable brands of all time, might I suggest you try Vagisil? Just apply to your snatch whenever you feel the need to do any of the following. Cast another girl boss despite general audiences actively vomiting over this idea. Declare a gender for an esoteric concept with no innate physical qualities to speak of. Completely erase 40 years of established lore and then complain that there's no source material. Initiate zero quality control measures to assure the internal consistency of the one thing you're in charge of. And blame the fans for your own failures. Remember, ladies, there's no cure for a sandy vagina. But use Vagisil to alleviate the symptoms. It won't make people like you, but at least you'll feel better about yourself. After all, that's the only person's opinion you really care about anyway. Episode 2 picks up shortly after the first on generic Planet 42, with May attempting to assassinate Jedi Master first white guy in the show, who has apparently been meditating for 10 years along with his terrible fake beard. After comically failing to kill him in what I can only explain as her punching an invisible box, she is forced to retreat after the arrival of Jedi Knight's second white guy in the show.
No relation.
Back on Not Hoth, we rejoin Saul, who is being briefed by Jedi Master Nepotism. She informs him that despite their custody of Osha, someone matching her description was seen at the Jedi Temple, lending credence to the twin theory. A theory which they can't seem to determine whether or not is plausible despite overwhelming evidence. Still on generic Planet 42, May, frustrated by her inability to assassinate Jedi Master White Guy, decides to use poison, which according to her random friend we just met, is against the ill-defined rules of assassination here. Also, it's quite astounding how the Jedi stationed on this planet have made no efforts to track down the person who broke into their temple, and are content to sit with their thumbs up their asses. Meanwhile, our group of Jed DEI approach the temple where they are met by Jedi Knight White Guy and his body-positive Fadawan. Wait a minute, I didn't realize there were Jedi fat camps, because there's seriously no excuse for the shape this guy is in. While they all discuss the best way to receive gainful employment with a gender studies degree, Jedi Master White Guy decides he's had enough of this show already. As he comes out of his coma, opts to drink the poison, and it's safe to assume the actor immediately went to fire his agent for getting him involved with this gig in the first place. After donning the worst disguise since Obi-Wan hid Leia in his coat, Osha impersonates May in order to question her accomplice who prepared the poison and gain information, which he gives up with surprisingly little resistance, and they move to set a trap for May. Upon her return, she challenges Saul to hand-to-hand combat, which honestly is so bad I might do a separate breakdown after this is all done. One which she loses handily and is forced to retreat yet again, but not before coming face-to-face with her sister, who hesitates to shoot her. The following episode has been brought to you by Subaru, the preferred car of lesbians galaxy-wide. It's Pride Month, and you know what that means. Head on down to your local Subaru outlet for our amazing deals. That's right, this entire month, get the vehicle that fits your lifestyle. Like the 2024 Outback, with enough cargo space to pack up all your belongings and move in with that chick you just met at the bar. Or test drive the Crosstrek with the perfect size back window to show off your engagement dog. With a sleek lower roof to complement that practical short haircut, which is in no way mimicking a man. Or try out the IIHS Top Safety Pick. Forester, with an increased towing capacity to haul your fat ass out to the middle of the woods and do whatever the fuck this shit is.
They're shaking and moving.
Hell, whatever it takes to keep your square-ass head away from whatever franchises we have left. Like, what's left? Back to the Future? Yeah, Back to the Future. Act now and we'll throw in a pair of complimentary flannel seat covers, absolutely free. So don't hesitate, because even though Pride Month seems like it never ends, these deals will only last for a limited time, and love the Subaru lesbian way. And so we arrive at episode 3, which is my bare minimum number of episodes before I can fully pass judgment on a show. We open 16 years prior to the first 2 episodes on the planet Brendok, a place of lush forests and wait a second. Well, that's just lazy. We join a young May and Osha as they keep trying to drive home the importance of their catchphrase.
Always one, born as two.
Which comes off as incredibly cringe and unnatural, like some stoner trying to be profound. They wander the woods until they're stopped by some random spiked-faced lesbian who escorts them back to radical feminist utopia. It is here that they are taught that one cannot simply wield the Force by being shown a demonstration of using the Force.
Okay.
After a rousing round of what resembles one of those no-touch knockout chi masters, we see how they are indoctrinated into a cultish lifestyle, one which May accepts but Osha does not. Forced to participate in a ritual called the Ascension to earn a greater role within the Coven. Wait a second, who was the main writer of this show again? Oh yeah, that tracks. After heavily resisting participation in the ritual, Osha finally gives in to the advances, realizing it'll be great for her acting career. position within the coven. At the ceremony, the two girls are greeted by a poorly synchronized interpretive dance, which results in what seems to be a collective orgasm as the ascension begins.
The power of one, the power of two, the power of many.
However, it's all for naught as they're interrupted by a digitally de-aged Saul, a not digitally de-aged Trinity, Jedi Master Walking Carpet, and Padawan first white guy in the show. Despite the fact that Brendok is well outside of their jurisdiction, who have concerns that they might be grooming children, which is followed by one of the single worst written exchanges I have ever heard.
Want to take our children?
The Jedi do not take children.
Would you like to be tested and see if you could become one?
Yes.
Someone was paid to write this shit! Also in the exchange, they mention that there is no father, which not only continues to complete this lesbian power fantasy, it retroactively makes Anakin less unique, further destroying the legacy of the franchise. After a series of inane arguments, the girls are forced to take the Jedi test with the plan of failing on purpose. You know, Headland, there's a lot of being pressured into things here. Osha is easily tricked into revealing this, or is it May? I'm not really sure anymore, as they literally dress the identical twins in the same outfit. Osha passes her test, and despite the protest of the witches, is set to leave, a decision which May doesn't take well, to say the least.
It's not up to you. You can't stop me. Yes, I can. How? I'll kill you.
Setting her room on fire, May inadvertently engulfs the entire temple within minutes, killing everyone in the process. Unless you're an important character. This is especially baffling as the structure is made of stone and steel, which is notoriously difficult to burn, but at this point, who even gives a shit? Wait a minute, isn't the whole setup that the Jedi were responsible for this and May was out for revenge? No, bring that shit back, I'm not done yet. What the fuck is this terrible writing? From the awful dialogic exchanges that immediately contradict one another, to the flat-out disrespect to the history of the series, all the way up to this horribly stupid plot twist that the villain is on a revenge tour against herself. Not to mention the not-so-subtle messaging about society not accepting the Coven's lifestyle and the fact that they are teaching it to children. Based on Headland's statement, this is so on the nose there is no way in hell one could possibly believe that they are being clever here, unless they have the IQ of a mouse with its head caught in a trap. The overall creepiness of the obvious grooming analogy is made worse when you realize the person who wrote this is Leslie fucking Headland, who is intrinsically connected to Harvey Weinstein. What an absolute mess, and we aren't even halfway. This may have finally broken me. I no longer have faith that this is a salvageable property. It's jumped the shark, nuked the fridge, and even has me questioning if I'm not in fact in the ninth circle of hell. When it comes to characters, I'm not sure there has ever been a larger collection of bland put to film. Whether it be to check a box for diversity or placate one's own spouse, every role seems to have been curated with the express purpose of doing everything except tell a convincing story. Luckily for simplicity's sake, the primary pro and antagonist are not only played by the same person, but portrayed as nearly the exact same blank slates.
Hello, Osha.
May.
Amandla Stenberg has possibly pulled off the greatest feat in the history of recorded media, as she is completely forgettable twice within the same show. And how are we supposed to take her seriously when she looks like she's cosplaying as Rick James?
I'm Rick James, bitch.
Opposite her is Lee Jong-jae playing Saul, a character whose extremely thick accent can only mean he hails from the planet South Korea. He represents my favorite diversity hire in the history of Disney Star Wars, as his presence implies the existence of a galactic 38th parallel. And I, for one, look forward to the debut of Darth Jong-un. Honestly, of all the actors in this travesty of justice, I have the most respect for him. Not many people can learn a language for a role, especially not in the time frame he learned English. It's just a shame he accepted the part before he was able to actually read the script. There are literally dozens of characters whose mere existence is only to fill a quota. I could choose any one of them to explain the supporting cast. But there is one that I feel represents every single thing this show tries to convey. Yord. For decades, the Jedi have been bastions of wisdom over power, able to use logic in even the most illogical situations to come out on top. At least that was until the introduction of Yord, who consistently makes the dumbest possible decision every time. Normally I'd say I feel sorry for an actor being saddled with such a terribly written character, but then I remember that he said this.
But you can't look and see that Anakin blowing up the Death Star.
And I realize the motherfucker deserves it.
Jedi Knight. Jedi dumbass.
Though his portrayal does yield one interesting realization, and that's, according to Disney, if you're black, you must have dreads.
God damn, that was racist.
Hey, I thought it was our job to be the bigots. I legitimately think it's time I finally put a goddamn bounty on any information as to where Disney's money is disappearing to. There is absolutely zero chance these episodes cost $22 million each. Aside from the fact they are primarily filmed on a fairly obvious soundstage, everything from the costumes to the props just look cheap. Even the CGI appears it wasn't just outsourced to the lowest bidder, but they then subcontracted it to an 8-year-old whose parents bought them the big box of crayons. Like many others, I used to be under the assumption these issues were due to time constraints. But seeing as how this show was in development for nearly 5 years, it's clear to anyone with eyes it's a matter of not giving a damn about quality anymore.
You know, if it looks like shit, and it sounds like shit, then it must be shit.
Speaking of the word assemblers, which is a joke I never thought I'd have to use so often, they have truly outdone themselves in serving up the standard boilerplate Lucasfilm branded sludge. Following the same template they've used for seemingly every production for the last decade, hitting every self-serving cliche along the way. Standard issue girl boss? Check. Misunderstood female villain with a dark past who will 100% end up turning good and be redeemed despite not deserving it? Check. Incompetent African-American sidekick? Check. They even continue the tradition of pointless cameos of well-known people. But by far the most impressive accomplishment is the overwhelming amount of gaslighting. By bragging about the 4.8 million views the premiere got, they have actually succeeded in proving to everyone how much of a failure their recent releases have been. For context, 4.8 million only represents 3% of their total subscribers, which is an abysmal turnout for a tentpole franchise like Star Wars. Also, by gloating about such a low percentage, it further solidifies just how minuscule the figures for everything else up to this point must have been. So there we have it, folks, what effectively will be the death of Star Wars. The end of a dream which started 50 years ago and bridged generations with its wonderment. At this point, it's become so unrecognizable, I personally wish they would just pull the trigger and change the name to Culture Wars. Because that's what it's become. It's a brand which now represents the worst aspects of society. One where Hollywood elitists are being paid exorbitant salaries to produce trash and call it treasure. Star Wars is now an IP devoid of meritocracy, as overpaid, underqualified writers and actors use the platform to preach politics and talk down to the masses, most of whom are just scraping by and making ends meet. Culture Wars is now a franchise where if you check the correct box or share a bed with the right person, you'll get a job you don't deserve, defiling something which was once held dear by so many. This is the only explanation as to how a hack like Leslie Headland, who by all accounts should be blacklisted due to her complicity with Harvey Weinstein, could possibly be looked at as the right person to be a showrunner, not to mention a feminist icon. It has effectively become a microcosm of all things wrong with the world played out right before our very eyes. When I say Star Wars is dead, does that mean I personally believe no more Culture Wars projects will be shat out from the word assembly rooms? No, I expect even more will arrive in the coming years to an ever-dwindling audience. If at any point in your life you called yourself a Star Wars fan, consider yourself lucky. Lucky you got to at least experience something great before corporate greed and the hang-ups of those in power corrupted it from the inside. The time has come to mourn what once was and finally let it go so these fuckers can finally lose their grip on us as a collective. And if that's not enough to convince you that there is literally nothing anyone can do to save this once iconic franchise which has been smashed beyond recognition, then I'm not sure anything I could possibly say would do the trick.